Welcome everyone to the Day of the Dead Group Planning Masterclass. As you know, this is one of the most famous celebrations in Mexico, and we want you to be as prepared as possible for any requests of groups that you might have. We are going to be answering all your questions right after the webinar. So if any question arises during the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat. So now, help me welcome Eric Alvarez, our speaker for the day. He is the CEO of VMS. He is one of the only 38 Mexicans to have become certified meeting professionals by the Events Industry Council. Eric started his career in tourism in 2001 when he founded Viajes Académicos 𝓜𝓪𝓼𝓽𝓮𝓻𝓬𝓵𝓪 in 2015. And in 2015 he became CEO of Destination Management Services in Mexico, better known as DMS Mexico, which is one of the most prestigious DMCs in the country. Eric has served as president of PCMA Mexico chapter and the MAC, which is the National DMC Association, and currently serves as vice president of national operations for the Mexico City Meetings Association. He also holds a position in the Mexico City Council for Tourism. He has also been included as one of the 25 historic leaders of the industry as portrayed in the National Meetings Museum. His intimate knowledge of the country has enabled him to become an expert guest for Grupo ASIR, a nationwide radio broadcasting agency where he had a weekly radio segment. Most recently, he participated in the TV show 𝓓𝓪𝓼𝓽𝓮𝓻𝓬𝓵, where he talked about the culture, gastronomic and natural offerings in small towns known as pueblos mágicos all around Mexico. So welcome, Eric.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Tanya. It's a pleasure to be with you guys today to talk a little bit about the Day of the Dead festivities in Mexico, which is a wonderful, wonderful time to visit because there's so much tradition, so much color, and so much partying going on in the country. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this intangible heritage of humanity by UNESCO, which is a celebration of Día de Muertos, Day of the Dead. And you might or might not know that it has two components. It's part of the richness of Mexican history because it has a pre-Hispanic component and a European component. As you know, that Mexico was conquered by the Spanish in the 16th century, and it went all the way to the 19th century. So there's a lot of mixture between the cultures in Mexico. But let me talk about the pre-Hispanic component of the Day of the Dead. Pre-Hispanic cultures did not regard death as we know it in Occidental times. Pre-Hispanic people kind of regarded the Day of the Dead and regarded death more like a passing between different echelons of or different dimensions, if you will. They believed that we had 13 heavens or 13 superworlds and 7 netherworlds, and dying was just a birth in another dimension, in one of those other worlds. So even to this day, Mexicans do not regard death quite as final, you know? So that's the pre-Hispanic ritual, and that's the pre-Hispanic component. But in European cultures, even as early as the 11th century, in Spain mainly, they used to revere, and they would just come out with, somewhere around November, they would take out some relics and some saints' figures, and people would take their things and offerings to the church to kind of commemorate that saint. It started evolving because later on they would take like saint figures into their homes, and they would put offerings in their own homes, and the richer and the more lavish the offering, it would kind of mean that they would receive more favors from the saint. So as they brought this tradition to Mexico after the conquering, it kind of melded together, between the pre-Hispanic culture of not quite death, but just a passing between dimensions, and having in your home offerings to a saint. So if you put these two together and you put the ancestry part together, that's when you come to the tradition which is closer to what we know today of Day of the Dead. So now in Mexico, you have November 1st is the day of the saints, of little kids or children that have passed away. Those are the saints, the innocent saints. And then November 2nd, you have All Saints Day. And the tradition now says that you make altars in your house, but not to saints, but to your dearly departed. Okay, so what you do is that at homes, and I do it in my home, and I know a lot of people that do it in their homes, they put pictures of their dearly departed. And the tradition says that over those 24 hours, the spirit of those people comes to you, to your family, to the graveyard, to wherever you want to receive them, and you can be with them. They come back to life for 24 hours. So around November, that's when it happens. And then there's this figure of the 𝓜𝓨𝓼. This is more 20th century. In around 1920s, around that time, José Guadalupe Posadas, which was a lithographer back in the revolution time of Mexico, came up with this image of La 𝓜𝓨𝓼. And La 𝓜𝓨𝓼 was actually meant to be kind of like a social criticism, and it was used for political purposes. But then you see the 𝓜𝓨𝓼, which is this image that you see in the background. And the 𝓜𝓨𝓼 is this death and how death can be in modern context. So now you see 𝓜𝓨𝓼s very lavishly attired, and so it kind of started evolving the 𝓜𝓨𝓼 and the idea of death walking around us. So if you see today in Mexico, around the country, people actually do the makeup and actually do the customs, and that's how they go to work now, and that's how they go to do their different activities. And you see people in the streets, they have their makeup, and that's how they do their everyday activities over those 2 days. So it becomes very colorful and it becomes very festive in Mexico. Okay, remember, this is not meant to be like bizarre, or it's not meant to be dark. But think about somebody that's dearly departed with from you, and what if you felt together with that person for 24 hours? Would that be sad, or would it be a happy occasion? It is, of course, a happy occasion because they visit you. It's when family comes to you and they visit you. So you set out an ofrenda. And an ofrenda, imagine that person is visiting you. So what would you set out? You would set out what they like to eat and what they like to drink and what they like to play. Even if they're kids, you usually put out some toys because they're coming to you and they're going to party with you. They're going to play with you, right? And of course, you have some specific things like the flor de cempasúchil, this beautiful orange flower, and the petals, they're supposed to show the way of the person who is in the other world, in the nether world or in the super world. It's supposed to show them the path back to family. And of course, you're going to set out candles because that's going to light the path for them to come back. And then you have other, like pan de muerto. Pan de muerto is like a round bread roll that it has like special figures in the top, which are supposed to resemble the bones of the dearly departed. And of course, you have the little skulls because, death is always present, but it's festive. It's fun. We kind of play with death over these days. So this time of year is a lot of parties, a lot of things going on, but people are happy. People are sharing. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit later on. But if you go to a graveyard, you're going to see it very festive. And it's full of flowers and full of music because you want to do the music that person liked when they were together. So you go to graveyards and people are sharing, people are happy. There's a lot of music because it's festive. It's not supposed to be sad. It's supposed to be festive. And that's what the whole of Mexico becomes. So the festivities in Mexico, when you're going to visit Mexico around those dates, you want to make it around the end of October, the beginning of November. Again, November 1st is Little Kids, All Innocents Day, and November 2nd is All Saints. But you will see these offerings happening the whole week before, the whole week prior. So the 28th, 29th, 30th, you still have a lot of festivities. Some indigenous communities have festivities over these days, like to prepare. So there's a lot of things going on the week prior November. Okay? Now, some of the cities that are better to visit during this time is Mexico City and Oaxaca. And of course, throughout the country, you have a lot of festivities. In Michoacan, you have great festivities as well. In other indigenous communities, everybody has their own time. But Mexico City and Oaxaca are particularly good to visit because of their infrastructure, the ease of going there, and because of the festivities that are kind of unique. Okay, so we're going to center on those. Okay, now let me tell you about those times. Getting into Mexico is not going to be a problem. You know, Mexico is one of the best connected countries in the world. For instance, from Europe, Aeromexico has 56 flights every week from Europe. But not just Aeromexico, you have KLM and you have British Airways and you have Air France and you have a wide array of carriers that are coming into Mexico City. So you won't have any problems getting from most of the European cities into Mexico via straight flight or direct flights or even with a connection. But it's very, very easy. There's a lot of frequencies coming into Mexico City. From the United States, we are the country that is best connected with the United States. We have over 2,700 flights every week into Mexico from all of the major hubs and gateways: Houston, Miami, San Francisco, LAX, from just about New York, Washington. So from pretty much anywhere in the States, you can get pretty easily to Mexico City via direct flights or maybe very, very short stopovers. So it's very easy. And from Latin America as well. You know, Aeromexico has 10 flights per week from Brazil, but we also have other carriers that are coming straight from Brazil, from Sao Paulo, and from Rio de Janeiro. From Colombia, you have Aeromexico. Aeromexico alone has 17 flights, but Avianca, you know, has 80 flights per week from Bogota, from Medellin, from Cartagena. So we're very well connected with Colombia as well. Ecuador itself has 26 frequencies per week. Argentina, we have a wide array of ways to get into Mexico from Argentina. So it's very, very easy. We're very well connected. We're pretty much in the center of the continent. So it's very easy to get here. From Central America, DACA, from Panama, a lot of frequencies. So it's again, it's not difficult to get to Mexico, even over those dates. So don't worry about that. Just as you know, flights are kind of expensive right now, so we need to plan accordingly so we get very good rates in advance. Now let me talk a little bit about Mexico City. What happens in Mexico City? Of course, Mexico City is the heart of the country, and a lot of things come together in Mexico City. And it's great to do Mexico City because you can combine it, not just Day of the Dead, but you do a lot of culture. You do Teotihuacan. For instance, Mexico City, I don't know if you know, but very, very few cities have 4 World Heritage Sites inside of the city. In Teotihuacan, the pyramids of Teotihuacan are not even inside the city, so that would be the 5th one. So four World Heritage Sites. The downtown area of Mexico City, which is gorgeous. The Xochimilco area, which is also an archaeological site. It's called the Mexican Venice, and it's towards the south of the city. The main campus of the National University is also World Heritage. And the house and studio of Luis Barragán, which is a very, very famous architect in Mexico. His home is also World Heritage. And then, as I said, Teotihuacan would be the 5th one. So a lot of culture, a lot of things to do and say and visit and experience in Mexico City. It's a high city, 6,600 feet above sea level, about 2,200 meters above sea level. Makes us a quite high city. It's not, we are about 23 million people in the metropolitan area. Just Mexico City is 9 million people. But if you take the state of Mexico, which is kind of surrounding Mexico City, it's about 23 million people. We're not the largest city in the world by any standards. Tokyo is larger than us population-wise. Even Chicago, area-wise, Chicago is larger than Mexico City. So it's pretty much contained. And so it's very easy, but there's still a lot of things to do. But around Day of the Dead, you have several activities like alebrijes parade. Let me tell you about alebrijes. You might know these. These are like mythological creatures that are, part, a lion can have wings and then talons like an eagle and then different kind of combinations. So it makes like these funky, ethereous kind of creatures. And the origin is actually Mexico City. We know them a lot in Oaxaca, and I'll tell you why. But the alebrijes is because this paper mache artist, he, in an amphibious dream, he envisioned these fantastic creatures that they were there to protect him. So as he came to, he decided to make these figures in paper mache. And the tradition says that those phenomenal creatures, and they look very fierce because they're there to scare bad dreams and to take care of dreams of little children. That's the alebrije, that's the idea. And then this guy went to Oaxaca. In Oaxaca, they had the Zapoteco figures made in wood, in copal, and so they merged these two traditions together, and that's how we came up with the wooden alebrije that is so popular today, and it's very colorful and it's wonderful. And again, they look fierce because they're taking care of our children. They're letting them have big dreams. Okay, we have the Catrinas parade, and I don't know. This is a funny concept. The Catrinas parade that is now world known and it's phenomenal. It's actually kind of modern. It started, I don't know if you saw the movie Spectre, the 007 Spectre. Well, I don't know if you know, but it has the longest destination introduction scene in all of the 007 movies. It's 17 minutes long. And in this Catrinas parade, James Bond is walking in a parade, and people are dressed in Catrinas, and they have huge Catrinas and floats and whatever. Well, that up to that movie, that did not happen in Mexico City. But after that movie, now it happens every year, and it gathers thousands and thousands of people from all over the world that come to witness this celebration of death, if you want. But again, it's not death. It's kind of like a rebirth. It's partying with our dearly departed because they came back to us for 24 hours. So it's a lot of dancing and a lot of music, and it's just a lot of fun. And you have also your monumental altars that happen in the main square of Mexico City. Mexico City has the third largest urban square in the world, which is our Zócalo. So imagine a huge square, and it has monumental, like huge altars to famous Mexicans that have passed away, literary figures, all of those. So we have these huge altars with these amazing and great big, huge like skulls and whatever. And that's what you see in downtown. Mexicráneos exhibition in Reforma Avenue, which is the most expensive piece of real estate in the whole of Latin America. And it's the main touristic avenue in Mexico. You have skulls that are, probably, about 1.5 meters tall, which is about 5 feet. And they give them to different artists so that they can intervene them. And so there's hundreds of skulls, and you can just walk on Reforma Avenue and look at the different skulls and look at the different expressions of art, and it makes for a wonderful walk in Mexico. Okay, the Day of the Dead parade that I already talked about it in Chapultepec Park. Thematic night walks. Mixquic is toward the south of the city, and it's a graveyard, and it's the amount of candles that they use in Mixquic is amazing. You don't have a single light other than candles, and it's almost like daylight because everybody, has hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of candles, and that's what they do in Mixquic. And it's a graveyard, and it's a once in a lifetime thing that you have to live. And the story of La Llorona legend in Xochimilco. La Llorona is this legend about this lady that lost her kids, and now her spirit wanders around Xochimilco looking for her children, and she screams, she goes, "Ay, mis hijos." I do a terrible job at doing that, but La Llorona, that's what she does, and it's a very, very popular legend in Xochimilco, so we can go there and we can learn a little bit more about La Llorona, El Charro Negro, and other figures. Now let's talk about Oaxaca. Oaxaca is an amazing state. It's one of the most varied states culturally in Mexico. I don't know if you knew, but in Mexico, in the country, there's close to 70 languages spoken today. So when you ask, what happened to the Aztecs? What's happened to the Mayans? What happened to the Zapotecs? Nothing. They're still living among us, and they still preserve their language and their customs. And Oaxaca is a great example of this because Oaxaca has 7 regions, and each region has a wide array of indigenous communities. So Oaxaca is a melding pot of all this tradition, all this color, all this folklore in Mexico joins in Oaxaca City, and so it has a flavor that nowhere else in the world you can attain, So in Oaxaca, they have the muerteadas, which is like kind of parades. People go out and they have a parade, and they go, through the streets, and they're having parades, and they end probably at a graveyard, But it's very lively, and you have like comparsas. These are musical groups, and they go and they play loud music, and people are dancing, and people are having fun. And remember, you have all these offerings, and of course nobody's going to eat them. So you have way more food and way more drink than you can do for yourselves. So what people do is share. People, get together, and they whatever I brought for lunch, we share with perfect strangers, and that's what we do. Okay, there's also around this area, around this time in Oaxaca, you have an electronic music festival. So again, imagine this time is very much fun, is very lively, with the cocineras tradicionales, traditional cooks that kind of meld together traditional pre-Hispanic cooking with colonial cooking and then modern techniques. So the cooking demos that you can do in Oaxaca with mole, with tlayudas, with tasajo, with so many things. And of course, you can't forget your grasshoppers and your ants and your worms, and of course mezcal, because come on, what's life without a little mezcal? We say in Spanish, para todo mal, mezcal, para todo bien, también. For anything that ails you, you can drink mezcal. And for anything that is good, you can also drink mezcal. So that's what that saying means. So we can have special event and themed parties in restaurants and around the city, because again, it's a city that's really done to welcome anybody from anywhere in the world. So authorities are very compliant. They let us do a lot of things in a lot of places that are public. Restaurants, they relish the opportunity of doing cooking demos, of doing parties, there's a special party there called the Guelaguetza, where people from the 7 different regions, they come together and they share their customs, their dance, their music. And so we can have a Guelaguetza for your groups, a private Guelaguetza. So there's a lot of things and a lot of fun to be had in Oaxaca in these times. And of course, there's monumental altars and sawdust mats. What they do is they grab different colored sawdust and they do mats in the streets with patterns and different figures and whatever. So it's just, again, very colorful, very, very lively. Okay, so a great idea is to do a combination between Mexico City and Oaxaca. Okay, so there's 49 flights every day from Mexico City to Oaxaca. So it's very, very easy to fly, for instance, into Mexico City and then take a short 1-hour flight to Oaxaca. It's very easy to do, and you land in Oaxaca, so you can have, like, say, 3 or 4 nights in Mexico City, 3 or 4 nights in Oaxaca, and just fill of fun. And no one day is going to look like the next one. Everything is happening, and just, it's one of those trips where when it ends, you feel like it just begun, but you know that you've done so much. You can even go by land from Mexico City to Oaxaca, because it's a 7-8 hour drive if we're taking a leisurely pace, or if we're going via motor coach. It can be 7-8 hours. If we're taking like a Sprinter van or a car, it's even shorter than that, from Mexico City to Oaxaca. But we can do stopovers. We can do a stopover in Puebla, which is only like 2 to 3 hours away from Mexico City. And Puebla is a phenomenal destination, a phenomenal city, which is also World Heritage, and which also has great dining, and the buildings there, and the tradition and the history there is amazing. And then 5 hours on to Oaxaca. And if we want to split that, there's a beautiful little town called Tehuacan, where they have excellent gastronomy. Around November, around that time of the year, they have a delicacy called mole de caderas. And it's like a stew, and it's just so good, and you can only have it in this time of year. So anyway, so it'd be fantastic. So even if you went by land from Mexico City to Oaxaca, we can split it up so that it's not cumbersome. You don't feel tired. By the end of you leave in the morning, and then you arrive at Oaxaca at the end of the day, but you don't feel like you've been traveling all day because you've done other activities in the meantime. Let's talk a little bit about Puebla, which I already told you about. It's about 2 hours to the east. And I'll have you know, actually, the 5 de Mayo, the 5th of May, is not our independence. Our independence is September 16th. But the 5 de Mayo, the 5th of May, we celebrate a very important battle in the city of Puebla. In Puebla, we drove the French army back in 1862, May 5th, 1862. We drove the French army out of Mexico, which was the most important and the most powerful army in the world at the time. We drove them back and drove them out of Mexico. They came back in 1864, and they kind of did impose an emperor to us, but we're not talking about that. 5 de Mayo is still a very important battle, and we won that one. But anyway, so Puebla, the city of Puebla is the capital of the state of Puebla. So they're very well known for their gastronomy and the richness of their culture. Okay, so a lot of mole comes from Puebla. They have a delicacy called chiles en nogada. They have a very important religious participation in the colonial part of Mexico, and the nuns were really good at cooking there. So you have a lot of plates that come from that colonial time, and now they're starting to do like modern techniques and modern interpretations of that. So anyway, gastronomy in Puebla is just phenomenal. But we can also stop by at the altars of Huacachula, which are very, very colorful altars in a little town which is outside of Puebla, but they're gorgeous. Other places like Chignahuapan, which has a festival of lights. In Chignahuapan, what they do, and it's kind of cool, they also sell Christmas ornaments in Chignahuapan. So we could even go to one of these factories, and we can even make our own Christmas ornaments. How cool would it be that, in Christmas, you're still celebrating the trip that you made to Mexico, with the ornaments that you made yourself. You have a Catrina's parade in Atlisco. Atlisco is a little town which is about 40 minutes from Puebla, closer to Mexico City. But the way that they light the town, it's just amazing. It's gorgeous, lots of lights of color, and very, very Mexican looking. We also go for a tour of cempasúchil flowers. Cempasúchil flowers are these orange flowers that have a lot of petals, and they are very, very typical of the Dia de Muertos, the Day of the Dead. So we can also go and do tours of cempasúchil, which is off the beaten path, and it's fantastic. And again, these are all experiences that you're going to be able to live only in Mexico. They're going to become once in a lifetime, because you're never going to be able to reproduce them anywhere else, because they're very Mexican. They don't happen anywhere else. But group activities. We can go and we can have seminars in 𝓜𝓪𝓼 makeup, or even we're just doing a Day of the Dead party, we can have makeup artists come to the hotel and have the whole group made up in 𝓜𝓼𝓼. And the good thing about the makeup is you can personalize it. You can do whatever you want. It just has to look Mexican. It has to have some components, but you can do a half face, you can do a full face, you can do colors, you can do different kinds of patterns. So you are free to do any kind of 𝓜𝓼𝓼 that you want. We can also have 𝓜𝓼𝓼 masks, and you can decorate them yourself. So that way you can have a memento in Mexico, something that you can display in your house. And we're going to tell you what elements it has to have so that it's truly a 𝓜𝓼𝓼. We can go alebrije painting. You know, the alebrijes, again, these mythical creatures that are going to guard over your sleep. And even for special kinds of groups, we can bring a shaman from Oaxaca, and that shaman can read your aura, and according to your birth date, they can assign a nahual, like a guiding animal to you. And then while you're in your stay here, an artisan is going to be making an alebrije especially for you, so you will be able to go home and have a one of a kind piece. There's not going to be another piece like yours in the entire world. So how cool would that be? That would be a great piece of conversation in your living room or your dining room. Imagine that. So anyway, we can also learn how to bake pan de muerto. Remember, it has to have these pieces on the top that resemble the bones and the skull of the dead person. I know it sounds really creepy, but it's actually a lot of fun. Mole cooking demo. Mole, Mexico is very famous for its mole. It can have more than 20 ingredients. It has chocolate, it has chile, it has sugar, it has salt, and all those things that, you know, should not go together, they actually go quite well together. So we can go to traditional kitchens and we can make our own mole, you know, and eat our own mole, which is fantastic. Tamales are very, very popular in the Day of the Dead. So tamal, if you're not acquainted to it, they grab some corn paste and they fill it with chicken and maybe green salsa, or they can make them sweet, or they can fill them with just about anything. They can make them with mole or whatever. And then they wrap them in the husk of a corn, and they steam them, and they get all puffy, and it's almost like a cake. And it's just so good and so filling. And so we can have a tamal cooking demo. They say that to make good tamales, for them to be nice and spongy, you actually have to sing and dance. So we're going to sing and we're going to dance. If not, we're not going to have good tamales. So that's going to be a lot of fun as well. Okay, we can do altar decorating. But what we do is we bring somebody to explain the different characteristics of the altar. And we ask our participants to bring pictures of their dearly departed. So it takes on also, you kind of participate and you kind of feel together with the people that you have lost, or the people that you want to have another 24 hours with. So you bring your pictures, and it's amazing. You can see, you know, our guests that do their altar decorating, and it's actually, you know, it's life-changing. It heals your soul to do these altars once you understand all the significance. We can do flower headpiece elaborations. Imagine that you're in Frida Kahlo's house, where she lived and where she made her own flower headpieces, and you can make your own flower headpiece for you, for anybody that you want, and we'll teach you how to build one of these in Frida Kahlo's home. Okay, Cempasúchil mixology class. We can have different kind of mixologies with the different traditions. Not just Cempasúchil, not just Day of the Dead, but Mexico is so rich with tradition and so rich with history that we can literally tell a story with mixology. And we're going to we're going to teach you how to tell your own story through mixology. And you can have your very own drink that you invented with tequila, with mezcal, with bacanora, with raicilla, with charanda. So many different pulque, so many drinks in Mexico. You can make your very own cocktail. Now let's talk about some challenges, because as you may know, Day of the Dead is very, very sought after in Mexico. So you have to kind of mind a few things. Like, hotels are not going to let you stay for 1 or 2 nights because they're going to be 100% anyway. So please be mindful of that. They're going to require a minimum stay of 3 to 4 nights. So please mind that if we're going to do Mexico City and Oaxaca, a program cannot be less than 7 nights, I would say. Okay, rates start getting high a year before, okay, because people do a lot of reservations a year in advance. So they continue to increase as as we near the festivities. Rates can get downright ridiculous. A standard room at the JW Marriott in Santa Fe over those dates can run up to $2,000. But if you do your reservations with plenty of time, you can do $150, $200, $250, which is the normal. Okay, so please plan in advance. Okay, because also conditions tend to be stricter as date approaches. So, and the conditions can change. So you want to contract soon and you want to contract early because that's when the conditions are going to be more flexible. And you can't really know what the conditions are going to be like until how they're going to change until you're closer to the date. So please do not let time pass because it's going to be harder and harder, and it's very easy to be left without any space. Okay, because make sure you are sure to find 100% occupancy both in Mexico City and Oaxaca over those dates. So do not make the mistake of starting to promote a trip without having your space secured, because if you wait, you're not going to have any space. Okay? Also, staff, restaurants, guides, everybody gets very busy around those dates. So you need to book soon. You need to contract fast, because if not, you're not going to be able to provide the experience that you want to provide. And if you're left with one of these components, then the Day of the Dead is not going to be as much fun as you and I know it can be. Okay, Mexico City, the Mexican Grand Prix, the Formula One Grand Prix, it coincides with the Day of the Dead weekend. So it is downright crazy in Mexico City to get a room. Okay, we get 410,000 visitors in Mexico City. And now our Checo Perez, which is a Mexican that races, he is among the top 3 drivers in the world. So if there's a possibility that Checo Perez might actually win Mexico City, it's even worse because we want to see a Mexican win in Mexico. So if he's having a good season, it's going to be even worse. So again, better to plan with as much time in advance as you possibly can. Okay, so these are our basic recommendations. But again, I cannot stress this enough. Start laying your Cempasúchil trail right now. You want your people to have that path into Mexico City and into one of the best experiences of their lives this coming October, November. Anyway, it's been great chatting to you. I'm very open to your questions and answers. That is the DMS Mexico team. Of course, we get our faces made up in the Day of the Dead because we also have fun and we want to have fun with you. So I'm open to your questions and answers. Tanya, if you help us moderate, I will be very happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So for questions, we have a few ones. The first one will be, I know Mexico is a great destination for gastronomy, but also its cuisine tends to be too much for foreigners. How do you manage that?
We tell people to be a little bit wary about the food because, yeah, as you say, there's a lot of spices. It's not that the hygiene is bad or not necessarily bad. Of course, if you eat off the street, which we actually do not recommend doing, you don't know what the hygiene is going to be like. But when you are in Mexico, there's a lot of spices, a lot of grease, a lot of ingredients involved with Mexican cooking, of course a lot of chili. So the only thing that we advise is to be careful with that. Of course, all of our groups, we take them to restaurants that understand international palates, and we also are very good at designing the different menus so that people that have dietary restrictions or that are not used to so many spices, they can be fine. So it's important to travel with a professional that knows what menus to design and when to give them, and even what times a day is better to give a menu as opposed to another, so that everybody can have a good experience. Because having Moctezuma's Revenge during your trip is not a lot of fun, as it feels that you might need your cempasúchil pass for yourself pretty soon. So just trust in the experts of DMS. They're going to take you to the restaurants, and they're going to provide the menus that are going to be perfect for your palate. Even if you have dietary restrictions, if you have allergies, we'll be very careful to only work with providers that know about cross-contamination and that know how to keep everything safe and everything so that you have a great experience and feel well during your visit here.
The next question is, if they cannot make it on Day of the Dead dates, is there something a group can do related to the celebrations?
Oh, well, that is an excellent question, because for some clients that want to have the experience, of course we can have it any time of year. The pièce de résistance here, the important part is that we can even have some agricultures plant the cempasúchil flower, which only blooms in October, November. We have them plant off-season and emulate the conditions, so that we have even cempasúchil flowers in March, in April, whenever you want, so that we can recreate as far as possible. Now, if we don't have enough time to plant so that we can plant the flowers in the proper season, there's still other things that we can do to emulate the festivities. And of course, we have contact with great makeup artists and everybody in DMS teams and everybody that associates with us, all our providers. They know that we're a little bit crazy or foolish, and we can recreate the Day of the Dead in March and any time of the year that you want. Of course, we might have to make a special call to have your dearly departed come whenever it's convenient for you, but we can do that as well.
The next question is it possible to have Day of the Dead experiences out of the November season?
That is a wonderful question, because yes, the one unlucky thing about Mexico City, for instance, is that it shares the name of the country Mexico. And yeah, I mean, a lot of countries in the world have problems with insecurity, and we are not the exception, unfortunately. We do have some drug-related issues, but as I tell everybody, if you are thinking about coming to Mexico to purchase, a few kilos of cocaine, then it's going to be very dangerous. If you're coming to deal arms, then it's going to be very dangerous. But if you're coming as a tourist, if you come with somebody who organizes professionally your experience, you're going to have absolutely no problems. And no moment are you going to even feel unsafe, because number one, Mexico City, it is a big city, and as any cities, you have to be streetwise, because there's pickpockets somewhere. But where we're going to take you is absolutely safe, day or night. You're going to be able to walk outside. Oaxaca is a very, very safe city. People are very conscious about tourism, so that they respect tourism a lot. So you're never going to feel unsafe. We're going to take you to only places that are going to be very safe, and where you're going to be able to have the time of your life, and we're going to provide those once-in-a-lifetime opportunities and experiences that you are expecting. So, of course, a lot of drug-related instances, they're going to be north of the country, and they're going to be, in other places that have nothing to do and are thousands of miles away from Mexico City or Oaxaca. So you're going to be very, very safe. So unfortunately, you'll never see a media saying, 20 million people and absolutely nothing happened to them, because that's not newsworthy. That's not news that sells. So don't focus on the media that gives Mexico a very bad rap, because honestly, it helps them sell ads in newspapers. But the reality is that millions and millions of people live in these areas, and we're perfectly happy living here, and we don't feel unsafe at all.
Next, we have, how large should a group be so they can have a nice experience?
Well, as you know, DMS only handles groups, so from 15 people on. But we've made things. We've actually produced meaningful experiences for groups as small as 15, 20 people up to the hundreds. So it's just a matter of talking to you. You know, everything that we do at DMS is tailor-made. So it's very important for us to understand what you're trying to accomplish, what kind of experience you want to recreate, you know, what the budget looks like, because it's going to allow us to produce less or more. But the better that we understand who your guests are and what you are trying to accomplish, the better we can better design a solution specifically for your needs. So if it's 15 or if it's 1,500, it doesn't matter. We can provide, you know, once in a lifetime experiences for each and every one of your guests, and it's just a matter of understanding and have proper design of an activity that's going to be perfect for what you want.
The next one is, would it be a good idea to do a foodie Day of the Dead trip?
How wonderful is that? That's a great question. Of course we can have foodie experiences. Food and taste is what feeds the soul. The most senses that you put into the Day of the Dead, the better experience it will be. Imagine if the Day of the Dead thing is about celebrating what the person that left us, what her or his favorite food was, favorite music, everything has to do with that. So we can do a recreation of the food, but we can make it a gastronomic experience. You know, during the webinar I was talking about mole de caderas. Mole de caderas is not necessarily a Day of the Dead food, but if you have it, it's going to help you associate all those memories and all those experiences, and it's going to make you, you know, feel closer to your dearly departed. And every time you taste that, every time you have that Mexican dish, it's going to bring you closer to your loved one. So yeah, of course, doing a foodie experience, and we can do a design in food as well for many days, and we can make the Day of the Dead celebration the pinnacle of gastronomy and foodie experiences, as well as the spiritual and the experience side. So we can do a holistic kind of itinerary and a holistic program, and it's going to be, you know, absolutely unforgettable.
And next, our last question actually is, under the understanding that there are 32 states in Mexico, would you say that the Dead of the Day experience will be different in each of them, or is it similar?
Well, some things are very similar. That's also a great question, because we are a very diverse country. You know, Mexico, the country is almost as large as most of Europe. That's how big we are. So it's a big country. So it stands to reason that we're going to have a lot of variation. I don't know if you know, but in Mexico, the country, there's close to 70 languages spoken today. Each one of those languages represents an indigenous people. So of course they're going to have variations. And the flor de cempasúchil is prevalent all over the country, for instance. The sugar skulls are present. So some things are going to be very similar, but then you're going to have different nuances in every destination. For instance, in Michoacán, another beautiful state, they have this island called Janitzio, and the whole island lights up. So it's going to be similar altars, but this is a whole island, you know, and it's great. For instance, in a little town called Campeche, and this is going to sound a little bit weird, but that's their own custom. They even go so far, in a little town called Pomuch, they even go so far as going to the graveyard and actually pulling out the remains and cleaning them and changing the cloth and kind of like changing the way it's dressed and putting them back into the grave. That's how far they go. So every state has their nuances, but the experience is going to be very similar, you know, and they take take advantage of their environment. So some people involve rivers, some people involve hills, but everybody involves their loved ones, and it's everywhere in the country. It's going to be a fun celebration, and it's going to be a celebration of life, of the celebration of the life of the person that already left us, because again, they're coming back to be with us. How cool is that?
Thank you so much for that, Eric. I think that was our last question. Yes, it is. Thank you so much for your time. It was really insightful. If anyone has any further questions or is curious about any kind of itinerary, please feel free to email me. You can reach me at tania.ruiz@dmsmexico.com, and I will be more than happy to, connect the dots for you. So thank you everyone for attending this. We hope you have a wonderful day, and we hope to hear from you. Take care. Bye bye.